On this week's Carrier Wrap, we dig into the growing push by wireless carriers into streaming video services.
Telecom Careers, the #1 global telecom and wireless job board, telecomcareers.com.
Thanks for joining us on this week's Carrier Wrap. I'm your host, Dan Meyer, Editor-in-Chief here at RCR Wireless News. Well, wireless carriers have had a tough relationship with streaming video services, as such offerings are bandwidth intensive and tend to stretch cellular network resources. For the most part, wireless carriers have steered consumers towards Wi-Fi connections when it comes to watching streaming video content through software platforms and pricing models. However, late last year, T-Mobile US threw a spanner in those plans as it launched its Binge On service that allows select customers to stream video content over their cellular connection without dipping into their allotted data buckets. To accomplish this feat, T-Mobile US relies on data compression technology that limits the video quality to 480p resolution, or what it terms DVD-like quality. As much as the streaming video is watched on smartphone screens, consumers for the most part are expected to be able to handle the degraded picture quality, especially as it comes at an attractive price point. So far, T-Mobile US's rivals have not followed the carrier into the free video streaming realm, though some are beginning to dip their toes in the water. AT&T is working to further integrate its DirecTV assets into a mobile video service, while Verizon Wireless recently launched its Go90 platform. I recently had a chance to speak with Mark Donegan, who's the VP of Sales and Strategy at media optimization provider beamr, to discuss how mobile carriers are tackling the difficult challenge of supporting streaming video content over their cellular networks. Let's look at that video interview now. Mark Donegan, who's the VP of Sales and Strategy at beamr, to talk a bit about, I guess mobile video and I guess video in general and how it's kind of impacting telecom operators. So, hey, Mark, thanks again for joining us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Dan.
Great. Let me start off with maybe those who maybe don't know much about beamr. I mean, obviously, it's a very popular car. But perhaps for your company, maybe give a little insight into the company, kind of what you guys do in terms of working with the telecom space.
Sure, awesome. So beamr is really an imaging science company. We are a startup. We're, I guess, maybe in beyond the toddler phase. We're 6 years old now. So, but as startups go, I suppose there's startups that are 12 or 15 years old, right? So. But yeah, we're an image science company, and the genesis of the company, it's actually a pretty cool story. Our founder has been involved in pioneering mobile video and just video in general for more than 20 years. Sharon Carmel, he was one of the founders of a very famous Israeli company called Emblaze Technologies, and the genesis goes back to a series of conversations that Sharon had with some Apple folks right around the time of the iPhone launch. And, it was very clear, and of course now some of these concepts seem sort of quaint because it's obvious that, that the iPhone, revolutionized everything. Right now we no longer buy digital cameras, we just use our iPhones, and no longer do we have MP3 players, we use our iPhones and those sorts of things. But the genesis goes back to Sharon was having some conversations with some Apple folks in Israel and saying, why, 16 gigs, which was the original capacity, as you'll remember, the iPhone, actually, I think it was 8. Yeah. But that's going to get filled up really fast. And so what is Apple's plans, or, why not build a service to store those photos, all the photos that, I'm going to take, but I'm going to eventually run out of space in the cloud. Now, this goes back now 7, 8 years ago. So again, talking about that today, it seems kind of like, well, where have you been? Living under a rock. But rewind 8 years, and this was all kind of new. Yeah. So after having some of these conversations, Apple said, you know what, you're right. It's a great idea. Obviously, we've thought about that, but it turns out that the CapEx is in the orders of hundreds of millions of dollars. The exact amount isn't even that relevant, but the takeaway for Sharon was that how can it be that in this era of Moore's law, doubling of capacities, halving of costs, every 18 months. I mean, something we all know very well. How can it be that the great Apple company even would have to pause and consider, the investment? So this isn't a story about Apple, but it's the genesis of how we came to be. So out of this, Sharon is a serial entrepreneur, always has been involved in, transmitting media, if you will, so videos and photos over constrained networks. So again, this was a constraint problem. So he set off to initially just do some research. Is there a way, and here was the question, is there a way to take a photo, in this case, and reduce it in size, but guarantee the perceptual quality? So everything started from, we're not going to compromise quality, but understanding how block-based encoding works, and someone who has even a fairly basic understanding knows that there are situations where more bits are used than are needed. In other words, beyond human vision. So that was the genesis of the company. It was a very sort of a simple need. And obviously, Sharon knew, and we knew collectively, that if we could solve this problem, it would be hugely valuable. Because even though, again, storage was going to continue to increase in capacity, costs are, decreasing. So nothing's changing there. But we also knew that resolutions would go up, that, we're just going to, as consumers, we're going to take more photos. Our photo libraries do not get smaller. Our movie libraries do not get smaller. They only grow, and they pretty much just continue to grow until we stop consuming media, which is probably only at the end of our lives. So if you think of it that way. So that was the genesis. So what came out of this was, or is, 61 patents that define what is a perceptual quality measure. And this perceptual quality measure is highly unique because it is one of the only, if not the only, perceptual quality measure that is fully aligned with human vision, which is to say that if we have a source file, and then using this quality measure, we create a derivative file, meaning that we reduce it in size, we can guarantee that to the normal, to just a normal viewer, normal consumer, under normal viewing conditions, that you could show them the original, you could then show them the optimized version using beamr's technology, using our perceptual quality measure. And other than just the fact they have a 50-50 chance to choose which one was the original, which one isn't, that basically they're just guessing as to which one. And that's how we started. And so it took us about 3 years of very intensive R&D, a lot of, this was not software development, this is image science. We have a team of PhDs, we have very, very strong expertise in the area of image science. So that is, that's the genesis. Now, we've commercialized that in a software product that optimizes video, which is probably going to be mostly our conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
And optimizes photos. So it's software. It runs on commodity servers, runs on the cloud. We're a very close partner of AWS, although we have customers running on other clouds as well, other public clouds or their own private clouds. But it's Linux software, runs on commodity servers, and yields up to 50% savings with no visual degradation. It's an amazing accomplishment.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and like you said, obviously now, pictures obviously were the first part of this, and as we've kind of evolved, and it seems like now video is, a big part of the market now. It seems like, operators, mobile operators, even wired ones are, kind of struggling with how do they handle this streaming video data now? And it does seem like that, that seems to be one of the solutions. Seems to be a form of compression or whatever it's going to be, whatever secret sauce can be used as a software layer, basically. And it sounds like that's kind of what you guys do, then, is provide some sort of software solution to, I guess, help operators with these congestion problems on their mobile networks. It sounds like what you guys kind of really focused on.
That's exactly right. We really only have one, you could say, I guess, requirement for who a suitable customer might be. And that is they have to care about quality. Because, the way the encoding process works, if you don't care about quality, And on some level, you could say, well, everybody cares about quality. But let's face it, if you're distributing user-generated content on a social network, you have just as an example, you have a different quality bar than Warner Brothers does if you're putting out a Blu-ray title, or Hulu would, or Netflix, or Vudu, or, there's different quality bars. So for us, a customer has to have a fairly high bar for quality. In other words, they want to reduce bit rate, but they're not going to sacrifice video quality or image photo quality to do that. Mm-hmm. And then the second constraint is that they have to have some constraint, or the second requirement is they have to have some constraint on bandwidth.
Yeah.
So, let's face it, and this really doesn't exist, but I suppose there's someone out there who would say, literally, I really don't have a constraint. I could transmit 50 megabits and I'm just fine. And so that person, probably the value of our technology is not going to be as great. But I'm looking forward to, hopefully later in the conversation, we can talk about Netflix announcement this week, which I'm sure is on your list, and also T-Mobile's Binge On. So it's very clear that, the largest networks and the largest service providers care about bit rate.
Yeah, and those are two things. Obviously, I guess let's tackle those two, I guess, operators, because again, the T-Mobile one is coming from the operator side of things, and obviously Netflix is the content provider side of things. Yeah. So maybe start with, I guess, the T-Mobile stuff. So their Binge On service obviously launched a month or so ago, and it kind of shook up the market a little bit. I mean, obviously, what they're offering now is to allow consumers to basically stream as much video content from certain providers that they want. And, it seems like they're using some sort of compression technology on their network. The quality of the service, even they admit, is not, the highest HD quality. It's what they're calling DVD-like quality. And probably for a smaller screen that most of customers use, it's probably just fine. And, the bigger the screen, perhaps you might notice it more. But I guess as you look at what they're doing as compared to what you guys offer, I guess, what's your view on kind of how they're approaching the market? And is it a smart way to go?
Well, I think it's a brilliant move for T-Mobile, in my opinion, and our opinion as a company. Effectively what they're doing, of course, we're not able to get under the hood, so we do not know exactly what they're doing, but understanding how adaptive bitrate solutions work. And that is for, any viewers who maybe have heard the term but are not real familiar, it's really easy to understand what adaptive bitrate is. Basically, what a video service will do is they will record a movie, the same movie or the same video, in multiple bit rates and resolutions. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple of reasons they do that. One reason is that there could be a legacy device out there that maybe doesn't support 1080p, as an example. Mm-hmm. Again, nowadays, this is becoming less of an issue because even your entry-level, low-end Android device will generally support 1080p. Yeah. But one reason that they do this is just simply to support devices. But the main reason is that what it allows the player to do is that if the bandwidth is fluctuating, so, again, just because I'm connected right now, LTE, I may, especially if I live in a downtown metropolitan area, I turn the corner and all of a sudden, I'm in a shadow, right? So I don't have that strength, so I don't have the bandwidth. And so what the player will do is the player will actually then, rather than just stop the video or buffer the video, which is a really bad user experience, it will detect that, I don't have as much bandwidth, and it will actually request a lower data rate file. And that might be a standard definition file. So maybe I was watching HD, and now the player says, hey, your bandwidth was just cut in half, and so you're going to run out of data, and the video is going to stop, buffer. We're all familiar with that. And so then it will play the SD. So what it appears that T-Mobile has done is they basically have some very lightweight mechanism that for these providers who are participating in Binge On, that it just forces the standard definition layer. Mm-hmm. And just to give you perspective, because they have made very public that it's going to save like one, save 2/3, I guess, 1/3 of the data rate. Yep. And it just happens that a typical 480p, which is standard definition profile for mobile, is about 800 kilobits. Mm-hmm. Some providers will encode it 1 megabit. You can encode higher, certainly, but somewhere between about 800 kilobits and 1 megabit is pretty common. Mm-hmm. It happens that HD is about 2.5 megabits to 3 megabits. So just by yeah, exactly. So just by simply selecting the standard definition layer instead of the HD layer, you get a 66%, 65, 70% reduction in data. Now, you could argue that, well, yes, but now you're getting a subpar experience. And of course, that's where technologies like ours come into play, because we can achieve incredible savings and yet you still could be delivering HD. Mm-hmm. But it's a very smart implementation by T-Mobile, in our opinion, because it does give the user the opportunity to not have to pay for all the additional data, still enjoy an entertainment experience on their mobile device. And frankly, on some mobile devices, really 480p is probably just fine. Yeah. The average consumer, it's not going to be such a shocking difference that they're going to say, oh, sure, I get unlimited data, but wow, my entertainment experience is highly compromised.
Yeah. No, it's a good. Obviously, the price point for it makes it very attractive. It's hard to kind of argue with the free.
It's hard to argue with free, isn't it?
Yeah, that gives them a lot of leeway there. But yeah, I mean, I've tried it on a couple different size devices, and the smaller screen devices, it does seem to be just fine. You go to a little bigger screen, 8, 9, 10-inch tablet.
That's right.
Notice that it's definitely not HD, but that seems fine. I mean, again, the price point makes it okay. That's not too bad. I can go with that.
That's right. Yeah.
Exactly.
So the reason why, of course, we're excited about it, and really, in fact, I wrote a blog post. We beamr put out a blog on Binge On, is that it just shines the light again on the fact that consumers are consuming more OTT traffic. Every quarter, the reports that come out, just it's your up and to the right graph in terms of growth, and yet somebody has to pay for that. That data, it's not free. The networks are very expensive that deliver this data, especially for mobile, for wireless. And, somebody has to pay. And so, there's a tension between the growing consumer usage and the cost of the network. And so for us, that plays right into our hand, because that's what we have, is technology that can reduce, the size of those files, but retain quality.
Yeah, that's a good part. Yeah. I mean, if anything, T-Mobile did bring to the fact before that, hey, consumers probably do want this, because it has seemed to have gotten a lot of attention, a lot of attraction from customers, and that it is actually possible to do it using some sort of software, again, which you guys provide, or what they're doing to do this. I'm guessing this is going to kind of wake up operators. I mean, I know they've been thinking about this anyway, but perhaps it might maybe force the issue a bit more. I know some of the operators of Verizon and AT&T, I know they've been talking about doing more of a hardware type of, I guess LTE broadcast or something like that, which is a different form of doing it.
Sure.
That's kind of a different model.
You're right. And the interesting thing is that there are certainly network optimizations that can be done and need to be done. But it's not mutually, it's not either or.
Yeah.
So, it's not that, we're going to choose to implement a solution like beamr, and therefore we don't need to do, they're completely complementary. Yep. So at the end of the day, operators are going to do both, and they're going to find ways to distribute the content multicast, which is what you just referenced, LTE multicast, which can provide huge advantages in terms of how much traffic there is on their core network. Yeah. But if you're delivering smaller files, at the end of the day, your package doesn't weigh as much, so that helps that helps them out as well.
Yeah, and again, too, the software solutions are somewhat compatible with almost any device, as opposed to an LTE multicast or broadcast. You have to have an embedded device to make that work. So
that's right, absolutely. Dan, that's a really great key point, because one of the things, that's something I missed in my overview of the company that's very important for beamr, is that everything we do is fully inside the standard of JPEG. So for photos, H.264 or H.265 HEVC. Mm-hmm. And what that means is that it doesn't require any additional, there's not something extra in the player, there's not additional silicon needed in the device. It is a fully standards compliant technology. And that's really key because, you know, when we started out down this path, we actually did pursue some proprietary methods of reducing bit rate. And you know what? We were able to prove some pretty amazing results. They would make for great demos. But at the end of the day, if we approach any operator with something that requires, you know, significant investment or in changing, you know, whether it's on the device side or, you know, on the back end in terms of tools and their workflow, you know, they could validate and say, guys, this is really great. Your quality is awesome. You're giving us, you know, 50, 60% savings. We love it, but it's a non-starter. You know, the investment, the complexity, it's not there. And so that's another real, you know, major factor.
Well, let's tackle, I guess, the content provider side. Obviously, Netflix, for instance, they have announced something recently about it as well. I guess what's your view on what those guys are doing? Because again, they realize that the viewing habits are changing to mobile, and they realize too that, you know, I mean, Wi-Fi obviously is expanding, I guess, in extent, but consumers are so used to just doing everything mobile anyway, and Wi-Fi isn't everywhere. So they are going to be using their devices, you know, in a cellular connectivity situation. And they know also that carriers have caps on their data plans and stuff too. So obviously it seems like they're aware of the situation, and they're also making changes to what they're doing as well to kind of help the situation as well, it seems too.
That's right, absolutely. And you know, for your viewers who maybe aren't familiar with what we're talking about, this week Netflix made a series of announcements. Started out with an exclusive in Variety, and then they posted some more detail on their own technical blog, the Netflix Tech blog. Basically, the net of their announcement is that they have developed a method for reducing their bit rates 20%. Now that in and of itself is, you know, that's very interesting because Netflix is 37% of internet traffic during viewing. So in fact, I went back and looked at some Sandvine studies, and again, I wrote a blog post on this as well. So you know, because we're super excited about Netflix announcement. It just absolutely validates our approach. But interestingly enough, Sandvine found that just HTTP traffic, so basically web browsing traffic, is about just a little bit more than 6% of the internet. So if you think about it, Netflix saving 20%, you know, let's just call it 7%. That's more, just their savings is more than all just you know, web browsing traffic during peak hours. I mean, it's pretty amazing. But what's really special about this announcement is that what they have developed is a new encoding approach, and it's an encoding approach that we have been advocating for and talking to a lot of our customers about for some time. And that is, rather than encode just at sort of arbitrary bit rates and resolutions. Now, I won't go into all the detail, but there's basically, Apple has published a spec of certain bit rates and resolutions that they suggest that a service encode at. And they're not completely arbitrary. There is some science and some math and some reasoning behind it. But at the end of the day, this was all established more than 10 years ago when bandwidths were very different, device capabilities were very different, even the state of encoding quality, encoder quality is very different. And so Netflix, like every other service up until this point, basically encoded their files at or near these target resolutions and bit rates. Again, without going into a whole lot of the science behind it, what that means though is that for certain content types, they were actually over encoding, meaning they were using more bits than you could ever see. It was wasteful bits, you might say. For other content, it actually needed more data, and so therefore there were artifacts being introduced. And that's why if you look even at a lot of video services, I'm not picking on Netflix or anyone, but we can look at any, and you might notice, you know, this one title looked really great, looked amazing. And then you watch another one, you say, you know, it looked okay, but it didn't seem as good. Why is that? And a lot of times it's because of this preset recipe approach. Nothing wrong with the service, it's how the industry operates. Mm-hmm. So what Netflix is doing is Netflix is going to, on a per title basis, encode to the optimal bit rate and resolution, or bit rate per resolution for that title. And so if you get a chance, in fact, you know, for the viewers out there, if you go to Netflix technical blog, they go into great detail and even provide some screenshots of what that means. And they show some animation content that at very low bit rates looks great in HD. Mm-hmm. But then, you know, you can look at a higher, you know, the Avengers, let's say. The Avengers requires a lot more data because it's highly complex video. Yeah. And so, you know, this is really exciting because, again, it's good for consumers. Netflix reducing data on the network is a big deal. Mm-hmm. And it just validates that it is important to look at how encodes are built.
Sure, sure. Does it seem like all the different options out there are coming together at a quick enough pace? Because, you know, at least on the wireless and mobile carrier side, I mean, we hear so much about the data tsunami and all these networks are being stressed out. And, you know, it's like, you know, operators are throwing billions of dollars at spectrum and at new deployments. And does it seem like, I guess, from a software or a technical side of things, when it comes to video, are things coming together at a good enough pace to allow operators to stay on top of this, or is, you know, or are they kind of, you know, do they act a little quicker perhaps and get on board this alternate solutions, if it is, or whatever it's going to be, to kind of stay ahead of what's happening out there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, so there's a couple facets to my answer. So the first challenge is that a technology like ours, we have to be able to intercept the bit stream. Mm-hmm. Which is to say that if a network is transmitting someone else's video, mm-hmm. then either because of encryption or simply you know, agreements that they have, they can't just arbitrarily capture that file, process it, optimize it, and then say, here, we're passing it on. You know, it's on a diet. You know, yes. You know, congratulations, we just reduced your traffic 20%. They're not able to do that, both technically, business, you know, even legally.
Yeah, there's regulatory issues and stuff involved.
Exactly, regulatory. So that then is something the networks can't do anything about, which is why I have to believe that the networks also are applauding Netflix, you know, decision, because let's face it, Netflix is driving most, you know, most of the capacity constraints that they have. Yeah. However, every major network has a video service. I mean, you know, let's just look at Verizon. You know, Go 90 they launched. You know, obviously they have their in-home service Fios, and they have other content plays, and who knows what else they're developing. You know, there's all kinds of rumors out there, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But everybody has a service. So for the service that they own and operate, then yes, they're free to do whatever they would like, you know, to optimize that video traffic. And so what we're seeing is that there's incredibly high interest from the telcos, from the networks, and this would include the MSOs, the cable companies, you know, anybody in the pay TV business who operates a network, basically an ISP. Incredible interest. People are in different places in their adoption. Some are sort of in the exploration. We can, you know, call it the dipping toes in the water. Others we're working with very aggressively, and there'll be announcements coming relatively soon. And some are still trying to just figure out, what does this all mean? You know, so the answer to your question is that, are they moving fast enough? Well, some are. I would say that in general, you know, look, here's the thing. These systems are complex. They're big. They're, you know, and so as much as, you know, as a small company with some really exciting, innovative technology, you know, sometimes we'd like them to move faster too. But at the end of the day, we've come to respect and to, you know, understand that these systems are big. They're, you know, they're complex. They, you know, you can't roll in some of these solutions just overnight, you know, as they say. So, but yes, there is a very high interest, you know, in the industry, and you're going to be seeing varying approaches to, you know, managing video traffic.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think I think in 2015, I think we saw a lot of progress as it was, and again, we still aren't probably close where we need to be, but it does seem like that the progress is ramping up, and it seems like 2016 is going to be probably another, obviously even a bigger year for kind of how operators move on this, because again,
absolutely,
you know, all that traffic's being thrown on the networks, and it's not going down, obviously, and you know, spectrum constraints and everything's going on. So yeah, I mean, it seems like 2016 will be, I'm guessing, like you said, I'm sure we'll hear some announcements from you guys, but I'm sure we're going to hear just a lot of different avenues for these operators and what they're going to do. And it's all kind of leading to the same kind of, goal really of
That's
more
right. Yeah. That's right. That's right. And the consumer's in the driver's seat from the sense that, we love video. We are not just binging in terms of, the snack. The notion used to be that, well, you'll watch a 2 or 3 minute video on your mobile phone, but anything else you're going to watch on the TV. Yep. And all the recent studies I've seen, and I'm sure, that you've seen as well, prove that, it's no longer that's the case. People are watching 20, 30-minute episodes on their iPhone.
Yeah. No, I remember back, 5, 6, 7 years ago when the carriers were first getting into video, and they were, trying to partner with people to provide little short 3 minute kind of mini TV series, basically. And that's what they were hoping. I mean, they could kind of handle those little short clips, but you're right. Now it's people want to watch a whole movie or a TV show or whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Change a lot. Well, hey, Mark, great insight on this. And obviously, it's a topic I'm sure we could talk about another hour on this thing here. But
we could.
I appreciate the good insight on this today, the great insight and explanation of what's happening out there. And again, as we move to 2016, I'm sure this topic will be, again, continue to be part of the conversation. So hopefully at some point we can touch base again. And, but if you guys have some news or some news comes out there, hopefully we touch base again and kind of get an update on what's happening out there on the market.
Great. Let's do it. Let's do it. I mean, like I say, there are some things coming from our company that I think would be very exciting, for you and your viewers. So let's do a follow-up.
That sounds good. And obviously, and I recommend to our watchers as well. Yeah, definitely check out the beamr site because on your blog, like you said, you guys have been on top of a lot of these advances going on out there. So it's good to get some insight out there what's happening. So definitely recommend you guys check out the beamr site as well for that. But again, Mark, appreciate the time today. Thanks so much for it, and we'll hopefully talk again soon.
Excellent. Thank you, Dan. Really appreciate it.
All right. Well, some interesting insight from Mark on the topic. I'm sure we'll hear more about this going forward. Well, thanks for joining us in this week's Carrier Wrap, and make sure to check us out again next week. Thanks for watching.